Grr.
Hey, and welcome back to The Office Field Guide. I'm Chris from Mulverine Films, and we're reviewing every episode of The Office ever. Today we're looking at Season 4, Episode 3, entitled The Launch Party. This is the third hour-long episode in a row, so there's that. But as always, this is just a review of some of the plot, some of the funny things in this episode, and some of my thoughts on the possible deeper meaning. So let's launch right in.
God, I can't think. I need more Mullins.
Launch Party is the 5th and 6th episode of the 4th season of The Office, and it's the show's 58th and 59th episode overall. It was written by Jennifer Coletta, not sure I'm saying that right, and directed by Ken Winningham. It first aired on October 11th, 2007, and it was viewed by over 8.9 million people.
Yeah, just explain what that is.
Explain what you think that is.
Okay. Just explain that.
The setup for this episode is that the Dunder Mifflin website is launching, and Michael is excited about going to the VIP launch party in New York City, while each branch is individually putting on their own satellite party. Meanwhile, Dwight competes against the website to see who can sell the most paper in a single day. While we see Dwight in despair over Angela, we also see Andy begin to take interest in courting her. We also see Jim and Pam's relationship blossoming.
No one asked you anything ever?
I'll expand on this during the ratings section, but this episode is kind of overall meh. Don't get me wrong, even a meh episode of The Office has potential for a lot of heart and a lot of laughs.
No. I'm an adult. I don't have to think or do anything.
Let's start off with the fact that Ryan is such a great guy to hate in this series, but can we just take a moment and thank BJ Novak for this performance?
Convergence, viral marketing. We're going guerrilla. We're taking it to the streets while keeping an eye on the street. Wall Street. I don't want to reinvent the wheel here. In other words, it is what it is.
And I can't talk about this episode without talking about the instant message conversation between Dwight and the website. I think they're great. It's the first prank of this season, and it's awesome. Dwight's such an interesting character in this series because the writers never make up their mind on what Dwight can interpret as real or not. On one hand, you have Dwight believing that a website can become sentient.
It appears that the website has become alive. This happens to computers and robots sometimes. Am I scared of a stupid computer? Please, the computer should be scared of me.
And on the other hand, we see how good Dwight actually is at sales.
I have been Salesman of the Month for 13 out of the last 12 months. You heard me right. I did so well last February, the corporate gave me 2 plaques in lieu of a pay raise.
And Phyllis's conflict resolution moments are pretty great, with Lunch Party as a pretty funny bit. I love how Michael bought green eggs and ham for Ryan because Oh, the Places You Will Go was out of stock. Michael can't make up his mind about how he feels about Ryan throughout this entire episode.
Well, the website is the brainchild of my brainchild, Ryan. It is my brain grandchild.
I'm your boss. I'm hot. I'm so hot. That's why everybody... I don't understand.
Well, that's part of it. It's just the...
And then there's this classic Alfredo's pizza debate.
Okay, what is better? A medium amount of good pizza or all you can eat a pretty good pizza?
A medium amount of good pizza.
And honestly, as far as hidden goodies go, there's not a whole lot to talk about here. I know the boy who plays the delivery boy is also in Glee, and Michael later at some point says that character's his favorite character in Glee, which is kind of funny, but I mean, other than that, there's not a whole lot in this episode to really pull out here for this segment.
Why don't you explain this to me like I'm 5?
There's an ongoing theme in this episode comparing big gestures to just being real. This isn't limited to just this episode alone, as characters are often doing larger-than-life charades for various reasons throughout this entire series, but it's in this episode that we get to see a microcosm of the foolishness of these gestures. Take Michael, for instance. He kidnaps a pizza delivery boy in this episode to, on the surface, prove a point about business.
Is about respect and accountability and follow through. You don't just make promises and pull the rug out from under somebody.
However, when you look deeper, you realize that Michael's trying to prove a point to himself, to the delivery boy, to everyone, that he deserves respect and that business should be honorable. Dig even deeper, and you see that it seems that Michael's trying to deal with being disrespected by Ryan specifically.
Because he's some hot shot, and you don't know anything about sales. So stop being a disrespectful little jerk, okay?
Sales.
In reality, while Michael's gesture makes sense in his own mind, he's actually doing the very opposite of what he's trying to prove. He's disrespecting the pizza delivery boy, and he's disrespecting that business by trying to prove the point. His foolishness is what causes him to not be invited to the VIP party, and his foolishness in these gestures are what constantly cause him to not be able to advance.
Yes, it's too tight.
Way too tight.
Really?
This is flip-flop through the entire episode. Michael has an epiphany of realness when he understands what he's actually done. He lets the pizza boy go, completely undermining his gesture.
You had to. What other choice did you have?
I gotta pay for the pizza. Well, I want you to go in there and pay him for the pizzas and give him a generous tip, no more than 10%.
This is also followed up by Michael's realness when he's on camera broadcasting to the entire company about Ryan's website.
Hey, I just think you should know that one of my salesmen beat your stupid computer. So take that, ass.
I think this gesture emboldens Michael to go crash the VIP party with Dwight, but we'll talk more about that in a minute. We get to see this theme play out in almost every other plot in this episode as well. Ryan's rant in the beginning about how pioneering he is, how innovative his website will be, and how transformational his vision for the company will be. Ryan's innovative and transformational website was beat by Dwight, and beat by a broken down Dwight at that. Speaking of Dwight, we see his gesture to Angela to prove that he's better than a website and to hopefully win her affection back. This isn't something normal people would be wooed by, but they're kind of weird. But even after beating Ryan's website, which in his mind is still sentient at that point, he still can't get her back in his good graces.
I did it for you.
I didn't ask you to do it for me.
You didn't have to. I hear she's single and ready to mingle. I'm thinking about making a play for her.
This theme also seems to be shown as Andy tries his hand in these big gestures too. Between ice sculptures and the speakerphone a cappella, he gives his all to demonstrate his desire to court Angela.
How'd it go? Yeah, what'd she say?
I don't know yet. I have to call you back.
You gotta give us time.
While she may ultimately succumb to dating Andy, we know that these gestures never really work on Angela.
Stop it! Give me that! Give it!
All of these gestures are shown to be flawed and useless. The realness of this episode, on the other hand, are raw and hopeful. For example, there is an incredibly heartfelt moment with Jim and Pam on Dunder Mifflin's roof. These two are defined by their realistic romance. The writers wrote this couple very differently than most TV shows do. Their love is in their connection to each other, which manifests itself physically, but more than that, emotionally and mentally. This is shown in their ability to sync up, to goof around, and to prank people, but mostly, it's shown in their conversation on the roof. As they share their stories of when they knew they liked each other, they laugh and they goof around with their past about each other, with Jim even saying that they should have been together so much earlier, which is something that we've all thought. Moments like these with Jim and Pam, they're not stolen because some big gesture. They're earned through all the glances, the break room conversations, the goofing around, the reception chats, everything else that we see, even the occasional PDA.
How dare you?
And there's another moment of realness in this episode as well. When Michael and Dwight crash the VIP party, it leads to a very odd final scene for this episode. Dwight and Michael take their seats on Dwight's car, and they go through this roller coaster of realness to spectacle right back to real. Their attitude overall was pretty downcast until one of Ryan's peers walked by and acknowledged their shenanigans. They taunt Ryan for a little while, but then slowly get quiet, and as they get back into the car for a very long drive from New York to Scranton, we get the sense that both of these men are left feeling that their gestures that day were not only tiresome, but they were really empty as well. Or I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe it was just an excuse to have Michael Scott kidnap a pizza delivery boy.
What gives you the right?
All right, so time to do some ratings. I love this cold opening. I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. It's great. It's what makes The Office's cold openings unique and awesome. You get introduced to their brand of humor, it sets the pace for this episode, and it's just hilarious. And this one specifically makes me feel nostalgic, as I can't tell you how many bored hours of school I spent staring at the exact same thing that they did. It goes without mentioning that Steve Carell is up in front of this crowd doing what I assume is complete improv. If you go back and listen to what he's talking about, it's grade A nonsense and it's awesome. I think the last thing to mention about this opening is that the talking heads in here make Jim and Pam seem so real. They act the crap out of these roles, and it's segments like this that make them seem so likable and so relatable.
All right, let's quit while we're ahead.
That was so awesome.
That was awesome. Thank you. Some days I am just on fire. What can I say?
All right, and so as far as the episode goes, as good as that cold opening was, unfortunately the episode goes downhill from there. I give this one a 3 out of 5. With the exclusion of a few funny bits and the heartfelt moments, I'm not a big fan of this episode. So much time and emotion is spent on Michael kidnapping this kid, which ultimately just resolves without much ado. And there's some pacing issues in this episode as well, which makes it feel like it drags on.
What's hanging?
Set up the webcam for the party.
Oh, good. Okay, cool. How many pounds do you think I can lose by 7? And then I gotta get him to the Dundies.
All right, so time to award some Dundies. The Dundie for the best ever simile for pizza goes to Kevin Maloney.
It's bad. It's real bad. It's like eating a hot circle of garbage.
And the Dundie for signing your real name instead of your character's name goes to John Krasinski.
I'll read this when I get home.
And so thanks for watching the field guide on Launch Party. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, like and subscribe. Next week, we're going to be talking about Season 4, Episode 4, which is entitled Money. I love this episode. I love this season. There's so many good things. So let's say you think I missed something. Feel free to leave it in the comments. You think I'm an idiot? Leave it in the comments. You think my voice is weird? Leave it in the comments. I don't care. I get benefit from any comments you put out there. Probably not anything. Don't, use your brains, people. But
Pizza by Alfredo. It's the wrong one. Hey, come on.
Let's go on the parking lot with me.
Hey, what do you think of Angela?
I think she's an excellent accountant.
Not like that, man.
Can you not do that by me, okay? That's making me uncomfortable.
I want to understand what you're saying, but it's difficult for me when you use that tone.
Phyllis? Stop it! Just a lot of... I'm sorry. That's our writer.